Okay, Shemonei, today we are going to be starting in the Tzurba and we're going to be dealing with some of the halachot of Chazaras Hashatz, which is a Hazara. We have the quiet Shemonei Esrei, and then we have the loud Shemonei Esrei. Okay, so we have both the quiet and the loud Shemonei Esrei. The question really is, why do we have the loud Shemonei Esrei? Right? If everyone's praying quietly, why we need the loud Shemonei Esrei. So here he starts off on page 271. In the orange box, he quotes from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, a machloket. What's the purpose of Chazar Shashatz? There's one mandam in the Gemara that says it can be used by individuals if they're unable to read themselves, which means, for example, there's someone in the shul who can't read Shemonei Esrei for himself. So he listens to Chazaras Hashatz, the Shliach Tzibur, when he repeats it, and he is Yotze his Shemonei Esrei through that. Now we're going to have to see that that's not that simple. He can't just listen. He has to actually listen and understand. He has to listen, understand. It means you have to understand the words to be Yotze through the Chazaras Hashatz, through the Chazi. Then the Gemara brings an opinion of Gamliel, who says it's not only for the people who can't understand, but anyone who wants to be Yotzeh through the Shliach Tzibur could be Yotzeh through the Shliach Tzibur. There's another Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the next daf, that says the halacha follows like the Chachamim on most days, meaning on most days where there's the regular Tefillah of Shemonei Esrei, which people are regular, people know. Therefore, only people who don't know how to say the Shemonei Esrei can be Yotzeh, can fulfill their obligation via the Shliach Tzibur. But on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, when the tefillot are very different, right? And you only have those tefillot on Rosh Hashanah. It's not like you have them on Shlosh Regalim that you say them 3 times a year. It's just Rosh Hashanah, just Yom Kippur. The time, the Gemara says, the halacha would be that anyone could be Yotze through the Shliach Tzibur's reading of the Shemonei Esrei, because it is a very rare Shemonei Esrei. Okay, so here the Beit Yosef brings down as follows.
What page?
We are on page 271, Malkiel. Page 271. Okay, so he says, once the people finish the quiet Shemonei Esrei, they start the Chazan starts the loud Shemonei Esrei. And here it says in the Gemara, he says, Tanan, and says, Kishem Shech Tzibur Chayev Kach Kol Yochid V'Yochid Chayev. Rabbi Moimer Shech Tzibur might say as the Rabbin, Yedei Chavotan. The Gemara Amar, Rabbi Gamliel Chachamim the Devarim Lama Shech Tzibur Yoreh. Amar Lo Kidei LaHotzi Et She'enu Baki. Amar Lehem Kishem Shmoitzi Et She'enu Baki Kach Moitzi Et Shehu Baki. So Rabbi Gamliel says, if you're telling me the Shliach Tzibur can fulfill the obligation of those who don't know, then they can fulfill the obligation of anyone. Baskin is the halacha, and here he brings down the halacha. Rabbi Gamliel b'brachot Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. The halacha is in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Shliach Tzibur can be yotze anyone through his repetition of the Shemonei Esrei. Aval b'brachot shel shar Yemot Hashanah halacha kechachamim. The halacha is like the Chachamim. Umashma v'divrei Rabbeinu, the she'enu baki hainu she'enu yodei leitpalel. He doesn't know how to daven. Umikol mokom maven hu masha shliach tzibur omer. He understands what the shliach tzibur is saying. Im eno maven masha shliach tzibur omer eni yotzeh b'shmi'ah. All right. So if you don't understand what he's saying, then it doesn't really help. So it's a very strange case when it would help, right?
There's a case that he doesn't know what he's saying completely.
He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know how to daven.
All right. Is davening. Does he need to know every word, or does he know that the concept? We're now davening to Hashem.
You're going to see it's going to be. I think if I remember correctly, I saw brought down that he has to really understand every word. He can't miss a word. He really has to hear the whole thing. To be yotzeh through the Shliach Tzibur's tefillah. So it's not that easy to be yotzeh through the Shliach Tzibur's tefillah. So you have to have a guy who doesn't know how to daven, but he understands Hebrew so much so that he understands what you're saying, right? I mean, usually when you think about a person who doesn't know how to daven, it's usually someone from, let's say for our example, some guy from the old country who only speaks and reads Russian or Bukhari and doesn't really know Hebrew, and he's sitting in the shul, and you would think he'd be yotzei through the Sheach Tzivor's tefillah, but he's not. In order to yotzei the Sheach Tzivor's tefillah,
why is saying Hominda?
I mean, he can't. He has to understand. He has to understand it completely. Look at the Shulchan Aruch says.
By saying Omin, he's agreeing. With
He's agreeing. Okay, he gets
Chazzan saying.
He's he gets the schar answering Amen, but he's not yotzei tefillah. She'im yesh misha and yodei lahitpalel yichaven l'mashu omer v'yotzeba v'tzarich oto sheyotze b'tefillah tefillah tzibur l'chaven l'chol mashu omer shel tzibur mirosh v'ad soy. That's the Shulchan Aruch says. He has to know from the beginning until the end what the shel tzibur is saying. He has to pay attention very well to be yotze through the shel tzibur's repetition of the Shemonei
He
Esrei.
himself reads it, and he doesn't understand it.
He's yotze.
So, I mean, from here I can understand that he himself hears it, meaning to say that he
It's
don't.
different. You're right. Shemonei Esrei is something else.
And he doesn't have to understand it.
You're right.
Why are we saying
But
that?
it's not.
But the reason I'm saying what I'm saying is because if you're telling me that he needs to hear it,
Yeah.
then midin shomea keoneh, I can understand. You're telling me that it's not yotze, but if he continues on and paying attention, and then it might be that he's yotze.
It might be, but I want to bring your attention to all of Shas. Whenever it says "ke," right? It says a chayla she'ein sakana kastakana. It's like you compare it. Whenever it says a lead "ke," like, so machlokes, what does like mean? Does it mean etzem it's it, or it means it's similar to it? The same thing with Shemonei Kohen. When it means it says Shemonei, a person who listens is like the answers. It means like. Or in Russian, you would say kabuta. It's as almost if.
Right.
Not exactly that it is. So therefore, he's not yotzei tefillah. To yotzei tefillah, you have to be oneh. And since you're not oneh and you don't know it, you can't be yotzei through that way. It's that's the way it is. Look what he says over here.
I thought the reason he was emphasizing that he should know it, and if he is because then you know what? Okay, you're listening to the Shkiach Tzibur, and if your mind is somewhere else, no, I'm listening, but no, but are you actually listening? To be Shomea Keoneh is you have to listen to every word.
I'm thinking to what you're saying right now, and I think a good eitzah, I think an eitzah that we can do. A person doesn't know how to read Shemonei Esrei, and he can't be yotzei to the Sheach Tzibur's repetition. What he could do is say every word with the Sheach Tzibur. I mean, if he has to sit there in Russian and he can follow along and say every word with the Sheach Tzibur, now he can help. He can get through it, and he's reading it. So this way he'll be yotzei. He'll be yotzei on his own without understanding. Right, transliteration. Like we have this. Okay, now, according to this logic, in this shul, I think almost 90%, 95%, 99%, I mean 100% on most days, everybody knows how to read on their own, right? So why do we still have Chazar Shashat? If, according to the Gemara, the reason why we have Chazar Shashat is in order to someone who doesn't know how to daven can listen to Sheach Tzibur and be yotzei, why do we still have today the Chazar Shashat? So in the Piskei Teshuvot, he writes, "Anshi Knesset Kedala shetiknu Chazar Shashat gam kedai lomer kedusha gam kedei lomer kedusha lekayim mitzvah benikdashi b'torch b'nei Yisrael." He says, in order to say Nagdishach, which is to be the yotzei of the mitzvah of sanctifying Hashem in public, they instituted Chazar Shashat. So Chazar Shashat is another, except aside for fulfilling someone else's obligation through it, you also be able to do Nagdishach, which you can't do in a private Shemonei Esrei. The gam kidei la'anot modim sheyesh b'zeh mitzvah. And also, in order to say modim again, everybody together in unison, another mitzvah. That they don't have kivana in tefillah. Vikar tefillah hi kivana talev, and the most important part of tefillah is the kavana. The person daven Shemonei Esrei, he's supposed to have kavana in Birkat Avot at least, and he didn't. You don't tell him to go back because he's going to do it again and mess up again. But now Chazar Shashat, he can have kavana in the Sheach Tzibur's first bracha, and he's mitaken his bracha of the Avot that he should have had kavana. Second chance. So there's a second chance to it. Here he brings from Rav Soloveitchik, and
it doesn't fit the Chazan's kavana.
so I tell you what, as someone who went up to daven many times as a Chazzan, especially in Shani Yom Kippur, but even throughout the whole year, whenever I would do the Chazarah, for some reason I have more kavanah at that point than when I daven the Shtil Shemona, the quiet Shemona. Say, I don't know if it has to do with that you're louder and you hear yourself better and you're able to pay attention more, or you're trying to make sure you don't make mistakes. You have to make every word correctly. Whatever it is, somehow that when you do the Chazarah, you have more kavanah. That's why one of the reasons I like doing the Chazarah is that you have kavanah, more kavanah in it. So it can work out also then. The Sheikh Tzurba has more kavanah, you have kavanah, everything gets fixed up. With the other guys kavanah, the one who's being target. Okay, very good. He says over here in the Igrot Hagrid, he writes, this is from Rav Soloveitchik. He says, "V'hainu mishum de etzem tefillah shel tzibur kol legabe kol hatzibur shezov etzem tekanos chazaras tefillah delay rak shel tzibur mitpal elik de kol hatzibur mitpalelim." He says that somehow it's everyone praying together. Everyone has to listen because this is going back to what we said. There's two tefillah hatzibur. Remember we said in the last year, and we said there's a tefillah hatzibur when they start 10 people together. And then this tefillah tzibur when the sheikh tzibur does it, because there's two ways to have the tzibur. You can have a tzibur where everyone's doing something together, or you have a tzibur where one is representing everyone else, right? You have sometimes a shliach, someone does everything for everyone else. That's also considered a tzibur. So you have two modes of tzibur, and you need to have both of these. That's what Rav Soloveitchik wants to say, and that's why he says you still have to have it today. You still have to have this thing. Now he's going to bring from the Kaf HaChaim. He brings from the Kaf HaChaim as follows. He says this, what they're saying, it's in order to yoitza someone who doesn't know how to say the Shemonei Esrei. That's lefi hapshat. V'yodea shekol divrei Rabbeinu Rabbanim Zacharnu L'Bracha Apo Pisha Yesh Behem Sodot Niflaim Ein Megalim Otam Muvashim Otam B'divrei Hapshat. He says the Talmud brings down a lot of halachot and a lot of stuff that a lot of times it seems very on the surface, very logical, very simple. This is pshat. But the truth is, hidden in it is many mystical ideas. Okay? I actually know someone that told me that he feels that fulfilling the mitzvah according to pshat is the wrong way. And you really have to do it according to all the mystical ways. This is not also a very smart way to look at it. You're supposed to do both. There's the halacha that's from the Talmud, and then if you want to add on all these other things, you could, but it's not as long as you're not messing up the halacha as brought down. Now, of Aval the May Rabbeinu Ha'ari, right? In the times of the Ari, Nitna Reshut Legalot. They had the permission to show the reason, reveal the reasons for all these things. V'gila Asod Shahachazara Shema'alta Yoter Gedola Min Halachash V'Shnayim Chova. He said that the Chazaras Hashatz is even stronger than the quiet Shemonei Esrei, and therefore both of them are on Chova. Kimavora B'Shar HaKavanato Drush Aleph the Chazaras HaMidah Uvepri Etz Chaim Shar Chazaras HaMidah Perek Aleph or Perek Bet Avin Shar. But L'chein Ha'ari Chazaras Hashatz HaYoitzem Einav, right? He would be close his eyes V'Shomea Mitkaven L'Divrei Hashiach Tzibur. The Ari, if everyone wants to follow like the Arizal, right? So this is what the Arizal did during Shir. He would close his eyes and listen to the Hazarah. Not look at a sefer, not talk to someone, not check the phone. He would close his eyes and listen. We should never be. Kaf HaChaim says you should never try to get away from doing the Chazaras Hashatz unless it's in a very honest type of place. A Shas L'Chag, you're last minute and it's Mincha and you have to do something very quick. Whatever it is, that's the only time. Even then, you shouldn't really do that. But if you have to, then fine. But otherwise, you always need to make sure to say Chazaras Hashatz. So here, this is a beautiful sefer that I bought recently, Rabbi Yoshua Alt. And he kind of like makes a collection of different ideas in the Torah, and he brings some ideas down. He writes over here, why is Shemonei Esrei silent, whereas Chazaras Hashatz is said aloud? And he brings in the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai writes, like we said, Chazaras Hashatz is that it does all the tikkunim that were done in the silent Shemonei Esrei. So the Chazar Shashat fixes up the silent Shemonei Esrei, like we mentioned. And then he writes that Chazar Shashat reaches a higher place in heaven than the quiet Shemonei Esrei. That means your quiet Shemonei Esrei, and that's why the Ben Ish Chai says we daven Shemonei Esrei, the quiet one, silently, is because we're fear of the klipot. Our quiet Shemonei Esrei is kadosh, and the klipot want to come to it, and the klipot can catch to it. Therefore, you have to say it quietly. Remember, according to the Arizal, you're supposed to not even hear. You're not supposed to hear what you're saying when you quiet Shemonei Esrei. L'alacha, the Talmud says you should hear what you're saying. Some of you said you should hear what you're saying, but there is the Arizal and the Mamre Mordechai. We had the Mordechai Liozek. Something Baruch said also the quiet Shemonei Esrei you shouldn't hear at all, because if you do hear it, then they don't hear it in heaven, because the klipot come and don't let it go up. But he says over here the Chazar Shashat is so much more kadosh that the klipot can't even attach to it, and therefore it goes straight up to Shemayim. Therefore, Chazar Shashat is way more important, so to speak, than the silent Shemonei Esrei. Now, this would explain why we had the Chatam Sofer who said 2 weeks ago, Shir, who said that the main tefillah, remember, there's two tefillah at Tzibur. You daven 10 together, or one goes and repeats everyone. Chatam Sofer said the Shliach Tzibur's tefillah b'Tzibur is the most important one. Everyone argued, how can that be? But based on the Arizal, this makes sense, because the Shliach Tzibur's tefillah is the one that's much more holier. Okay, so now, based on understanding this, you understand why we don't get rid of we're not abolishing the Chazar Shashat. And now we're going to see how important it is. Now we're going to see how important it is to have proper conduct when we are listening to the Chazar Shashat. Okay, now we're on page 275. We are in source 6. We mentioned from the Bet Yosef that one of the main reasons of saying Shliach Tzurba saying Chazar Shashat is in order to say Nagdishach. In order to say Nagdishach, you have to have Chazar Shashat. So here we bring from the Tur. So you see the Tur had the nusach of saying Nagdishach v'na'aritzach. V'aynu acharav kiddusha, and then we say kiddusha. Right now he brings down v'ayimrim b'Ashkenaz and nusach Ashkenaz nusach acher. This is their nusach. Nekadesh et shemach v'olamach kishem shemekadesh inoto b'shmei maram v'chein kotuv al yedei nivyach v'kara zel zeh v'yemah v'yesh bo yudalet tevot k'mo sheyesh b'pasuk v'kara zel zeh. So nusach Ashkenaz, their nusach of Nagdishach, which is Nagdesh, they dafka have 14 words to compare to the pasuk in Yeshaya that says V'kra zel zeh v'yemah, that also has 14 words. So you see, he brings over here that you have a nusach of saying Nagdishach. Now, exactly what he said, he says, V'ya'anu acharav kiddusha. They answer to him kiddusha. Bet Yosef says, Nir midivei Rabbeinu, she'ena tzibur oimrim im ha'chazan nagdishach. That the tzibur should not say nagdishach with the Chazan. That's what it means. The Torah says they answer kedusha. They don't say nagdishach v'na'aritzach. Elu shoytkin, they keep quiet. M'chavnu l'mashu she'el tzibur oimrim shegiel l'kadosh oz yanu v'yomru kadosh kadosh kadosh. So according to the Bet Yosef, you don't say nagdishach v'na'aritzach. Only the Chazan says nagdishach v'na'aritzach. We just answer kadosh kadosh kadosh. And the Russia agrees with this. The Gam Davar Pashat Hu she'ein lomer kaddish im ha'chazan ki ein lomer kaddish elu b'asar v'tzarich lahavin l'chazan v'lanot amen yehi shmei rabba acharav. No one should say the kaddish with the chazan. You have to answer k'moi came b'kedusha omer chazan nagdisha v'nagdishach ad she'megiel l'kadosh v'az oinen atzibur kadosh. So unlike what we do today, where everyone says nagdishach v'na'aritzach, but rather the Tur, the Rosh, and the Beit Yosef all seem to be saying you do not say nagdishach v'na'aritzach until you get to kadosh kadosh kadosh. Shulchan Aruch ein atzibur omer mishach tzibur nagdishach el shoytkin mechavin l'mashu she'el tzibur omer ad she'megiel l'kedusha v'az onim atzibur kadosh. Shulchan Aruch says also you don't say nagdishach v'na'aritzach, you say kadosh kadosh kadosh. Oh, why are we doing that? Okay, so we have to go a little further. I didn't say I had to say it. Shulchan Aruch said. Shulchan Aruch says. But let's see. Now, The Mishnah Berurah brings down the Yesh Makilin Sheyochel Emre Mashiach Tzibur. V'haminag hanochen k'moy shekotev HaShulchan Aruch. So Mishnah Berurah says Shulchan Aruch is correct. Shouldn't say it.
What?
Ki moinim shechu achronim mechein nohag hagra. So to the Vilna Gaon was nohag not to say Nagdi Shulchan Aritzach to repeat only from Kadosh Kadosh Kadosh. When we call Makam haminig v'yemenu she'aymer makal gam kein Nagdi Shach. It turned to be that the minhag is people do say Nagdi Shach. Brings to the Yalkut Yosef. The Yalkut Yosef says Mash nohagim shekol hakal aymer bekol ram u'v'nigun. And with the song, et nusach hakdusha nagdisha v'naritzach, they're saying it with a song and a tune. And here in the Tzurba Rabbanon, the editors print down on note 3 on the bottom. Svardim today often chant the first sentence of kedusha together with a tune, especially on Shabbat and holidays. Right? Okay, so but he says we say it all together. Yesh leminag ze al mal yesh leminag ze al mat lismoich kein pasha the minhag bechol mekomot. The Yalkut Yosef says turns to me that this is the minhag everywhere. They have what to rely on, and this is what we can do. So turns out to be that the Shulchan Aruch says you answer from Kadosh Kadosh Kadosh, but the minhag today is that we say Nagdisha v'naritzach as well,
without a tune,
with or without a tune. That would be true.
Now we have to say with the tune every day.
no,
So
with or without.
you can make a tune, very simple tune. You don't have to sing so long. You make a nice tune without stretching. You can do that. Okay. Here, Yosef's going to give a demo afterwards. It'll be in a separate file. Okay. Now he brings over here from the Yalkut Yosef is continuing, and Yalkut. This is in the Ha'ara. This is in a note in the Yalkut Yosef. It says as follows. If a person starts Shemonei Esrei together with the Chazzan, he says every single word, including Nagdi Shach v'naritzach with the Chazzan. V'mamar Mordechai, Gatav leishev l'divrei Moran. So he says to stay together, and here it says to start from Kedusha. So he says he's trying to explain it. Ram Nagdi Shach v'naritzach. Mishum shnera kekalot rosh. Avim rotzim atzibur lo mekonusav belachash shaper dami. So the Yalkut Yosef says in the note, the issue is screaming Nagdisha v'naritzach out loud, louder than the Chazzan. That's the problem. To say it together with the Chazzan is not the problem. As long as you're not overpowering the Chazzan. We overpower them. We're helping them. Sometimes the Chazzan wants you to help him, so he waits for you to start the tune.
So that's okay.
You're helping him.
No, because I heard somebody say before, no, you're overpowering. That's it.
Yeah, you shouldn't overpower. If he knows, if he's okay, he doesn't need your help, then don't overpower him.
No, the idea behind it that everybody's saying Nagdisha. They said it as loud as they can, so they wake up the others.
What's what I say from that
So it
reason?
would be b'cheshek, it would be.
I hear. Okay. If you think it's L'Shem Shemayim is to be good, then do it.
Joseph, why you make your voice louder?
He wants people to sing with them.
To be together, everybody.
Everybody will be together.
Let's see. V'harizal b'shar kavanas kosov. B'tzarech lamed kol nusach kedusha im asher timor mila b'mila. According to the Harizal, you have to say every word of Nagdishach with the Chazzan word for word. That's the way the Harizal says to do it. Okay. B'shtei tevot Nagdishach v'yitzach yomram b'kol ram. And the first two words you have to say loud. So according to the Harizal, you say every word with the Chazzan, but the first two words you scream it. And then you go quiet. You can understand how it's good. That's the way. That's what it says from here. But
What did you
perhaps Shemadik Shkosh should share table Yom Malachash loud ikuv kamar. The whole ikur kavana so should start learning bedaf k'shtei tevot nagish v'netzol kol ram. Ein kasav sefer nizot shimshon. Devari hava hu uval lalacha ba'afreinim. Ein pashat haminag. So the Yalkut Yosef says in his note that this is the minhag. They say Nagdisha v'naritzach loud. So maybe this is where you're getting the loud part for Nagdisha v'naritzach, and the rest of it is low, and you answer the way we do. Okay.
We learned that in the past. Sometimes you make it louder.
Yeah.
Not because But to wake up the
Wake up the oilam.
The oilam, exactly.
Wake up the oilam.
So you every so often you bring in something to wake up.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. He's saying good. In the Alka Joseph, he writes over here. This is not in the Tzurba. I'm reading outside the Tzurba Rabbanan right now. He says over here, "Roy la'otzam et eno be'et emirat hakedusha v'lisa einav kafei mala." That when a person is saying nagdisha, the recommended practice: close your eyes and put your eyes to heaven. Okay, so you close your eyes and you put your eyes to heaven. What else did he say over here? Nohagim lidaleg me'at v'laharim akavo min akarka she'omer pasuk kadosh or pasuk baruch or pasuk yimloch v'kedusha. Minhag, as we do, is that we do a little. We pick up our heels a little bit when we are getting to the psukim. Vayu kol shloshat digulim shavim zeh lezeh. Lo yidaleg be'echad yoter ma'asheni. Don't jump on one more than you do in the other one. Everyone should have the same pickup. Vayu kol shloshat digulim shavim zeh lezeh. I'm reading the Yalkut Yosef. It says, "Vayu kol shoshat dilugim shavim zeh lezeh, v'lo yidalek ve'echad yoter mahasheni." Each one should be the same, equal. Shouldn't be more.
Who said like this? Like this? Who said like this?
I don't know. You tell me. You telling me. Yosef Chaim said that. I don't know. V'dilug ha'inu she'erim ya'at ekvav begufa kalfei mal. Peace ain't no more. Okay, that's what he says. You should have equal jumps. He says over here in Zion, Kashir Tzibur Omer le'umatam meshavachim ve'omerim, or uv'dvei kachach katuv lemor, al yarich bahem. Sheikh Tzibur should not stretch out. Umatam meshavachim ve'omerim, shouldn't stretch it out. Why? El yamehel omram, shem yimshoch bahem yesh lechoy shehakal yomer baruch kavod ve'imloch kodim sheyigmar. V'hava ke'ein amen yitoma. Because what's going to happen, people are already jumping to say Baruch kavod Hashem kamo, or Yimloch Hashem, right? And they're not going to wait for him to finish because he's stretching it. They already think he's going to end it. So therefore, he shouldn't take his time. Okay. Also, anyone who goes up to Sheikh Tzibur knows that when you end the beracha, the last word you should not stretch. Okay, because the person needs to say Amen. You want to stretch on the word before the second to last word. This way you stretch and then you end up the word, and this way everyone can answer Amen. Because if you're stretching, people want to enter Amen already when you're getting there, and it's going to be problematic. Okay, so that's just some stuff on Nagdishah. Now we're on page 278. Page 278, we're in source 13. This is now dealing with, I know he's going to go back to this. I don't know why Tzurba goes back and forth on this, but this is the way he does it. What happens if a person is in the middle of his quiet Shemonei Esrei, and they're already starting the Chazarah, and now they're up to Nagdishah? What does he do? So this comes in the principle of Shemei Kohen, like you said before. He should keep quiet and listen, and this way he's going to be yotzet to the Shliach Tzibur.
That's if he's not holding with.
Right, he's not holding with them. He's not reading it with them. He started the same time as everybody, and 10 people finished way before him, and he's he's slow. He has a lot of kavanot, which is very good. And now they're saying Nagdishah. So what does he do? He keeps quiet and he listens to what they're saying. So then Igrot Moshe Feinstein says as follows: Yomer Kedusha B'Kol Ram, Achash Yomer HaTzibur B'Atzmo, K'dei Shishma'u Elu She'omdim Be'emtza Tefillah. Egros Moshe says that if you know there are people who are going to be yosef through the Sheikh Tzibur's Nagdishah, because there's davening still quiet Shemonei Esrei, the Sheikh Tzibur has to make sure that he is heard. Therefore, he should, if everyone's saying it out loud, he should wait for them to finish saying it, and then he should say it after them. That's what he says over here. And he says that says even today, when usually the Sheikh Tzibur is not being yotze to someone else through the tefillah, because most people know how to daven, still, a person could be yotze his nagdishach through Shemei Kohen with the understanding that the Sheikh Tzibur is going to be yotze him. Just wanted to read from the Yalkut Yosef how should a Sheikh Tzibur custom himself when he's doing this loud Shemonei Esrei if someone is still in the quiet Shemonei Esrei. Sheikh Tzibur magil kadosh 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 im kol hatzibur saimo et tfilat halachash im kol hatzibur saimo et tfilat halachash hanochen hu Sheikh Tzibur yorem pasuk zeh im kol hatzibur biyachad ve'filim kolo enu nishma. If everyone already finished davening in the whole shul and now he's starting Shemonei Esrei, so there's no one who needs to listen to his nagdisha. So then he says everything together with the kahal. And you should try to be a little louder than the rest of the congregation. There's still some people who are davening the Quiet Shemoneh Esrei, and they're going to be listening to him for Nagdi. But often, that everyone should be able to hear him. He should say it very, very loud. And if he has a weak voice, then he should say it after the Shiach Tzibor, the Kahal finishes saying it. So everyone says Kadosh, 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 and he doesn't have a loud voice. He waits for them to finish, and then he says Kadosh, 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 so he can hear it. He has to have in mind to be yotze them when he does this. The Shiach Tzibor has to have in mind to be yotze the people who are still davening the Quiet Shemoneh Esrei.
Already, that's the job automatically. Thank you.
No, sometimes don't know this.
We sometimes assume that the Shiach Tzibor has that kavanah, but it's good to still do that kavanah. But sometimes we do assume and say same thing with kiddush. We say you need to have kavanah if the person is saying it. We say that people making kiddush, they know that they're being yotze to others, so they don't have to actually verbalize it. There is such a thing.
That's why I asked Yosef to go especially.
Because he has kavanah.
He has kavanah. Only Yosef has kavanah. Everybody else I don't know about.
Emotion?
Yes, Malkiel.
What about Musaf on Shabbat or holidays? It's the same concept with Keter Yidon Lecha?
Same concept, that's right. So when you get to Kadosh, 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 and you get to Baruch Kavod, those places where it's the chiyuv to answer, he should either go very loud and he should be able to be heard over everyone, or you should wait for them to finish Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kavod Hashem Kamo, and then say it afterwards.
Including Keter, right? From Keter.
Including Keter, including Keter, yes. Anytime. Anytime we do Kedusha. In Halacha 9, in the Yalkut Joseph, I'm reading out again outside from the Tzibor, he says a very similar thing. If a person is quiet, davening is quiet Shemoneh Esrei, and they're up to Nagdishach, he doesn't answer them. Rather, he keeps quiet and he listens to them. And he's Yotze his Chova. Because Shomea Ka'oneh. V'nochan Yotze Shelo Yidalig B'Raglav, he doesn't jump his feet. He's listening. He's not jumping his feet, right? Because he's not saying it, he's just listening. When they're saying Kedusha. But this is only if you have a Shliach Tzibor who knows what he's doing. If you put a Shliach Tzibor who never usually goes up to daven, today he's going up. He doesn't know what he's doing, so therefore you don't wait for him. He ain't Baki. Yeah, the guy who's reading the Quiet Shemoneh Esrei, if there is somebody who's a Shiach Tzibor doesn't know to yotze him, and it's just a regular guy who doesn't know halachot, the person who is in his Quiet Shemoneh Esrei doesn't have to stop for Nagdishach, just continues davening, because since the Shiach Tzibor is not having kavanah for him, he's not going to be yotze the Nagdishach. Therefore, there's no reason for him to wait.
How we know? We don't. Nobody knows. No.
So if Malon Yosef goes up, anyone who's in this shir right here, if they go up, it's fine. Anyone who's a Talmud Chacham that he learned the Talmud Chacham not just in Talmud, but rather someone who learns halakha and knows some halakha, you can assume that he knows this. If someone, this is a guy that sometimes you have these Israeli blatni, they come and they know how to read, they have a good voice, but they really don't know halachot. So in such a case, you know that you don't have to stop there. Yes, Malkiel.
Same thing by Aravit or Shacharit when Hashem Elokeichem Emet at the end of Shema, the Chazzan says. It's the same concept.
Same concept. He says so Hashem Elokeichem Emet. When the Sheach Tzibor says Hashem Elokeichem Emet after Shema, that's the same concept. It says over there in the Sidurim, it says if you know the guy doesn't have kavanah for you, say it yourself. Because you have to say Hashem Elokeichem Emet. Only if he has kavanah for you, you don't have to say it yourself. So Malkiel, what I do in practice, I always say it. Chazzan, I always say it. Hashem Elokeichem Emet. Chazzan has kavanah for me, doesn't have kavanah for me. I say it this way. I know that I said it in one way or the other. So I say it. There's nothing wrong with saying it. Okay. He says the same thing is the Sheikh Tzibur is saying it together with the whole shul, and he doesn't have a loud voice, and you can't hear him. Therefore, you shouldn't wait for him and just continue your quiet Shemoneh Esrei. Okay, so the only way to be yotzei is if you hear him and he has kavanah for you. All right, so that's an important concept. Here he brings in the Igros Moshe again. Oh, so now it comes in as follows. This is a very big question for us. We always have this. What happens if you go to Nusach Ashkenaz Minyan? Okay, now we say Nagdishach v'Neritzach, and they say Nagdesh Shemach v'Olamach. So do you have to go the way they say Nagdishach? Or do we say Nagdishach the way we say? Now, the Kaddish, Baruch Hashem Kamo, and Yimloch Hashem Matzion, those are the same. What we repeat is the same. What we say out loud is the same. The Nagdishach part is different, right? So what do? So according to Rav Moshe, say again, Avram?
Sephardi, we continue doing our custom.
You are correct. But the Igros Moshe, according to Ashkenazim, not that simple. According to Moshe Feinstein, wherever you are, you have to go according to what they're doing. You'll see. Here we have the Agudah and the Young Israel. You see, if people go from the Young Israel, they go to the Agudah, they say Kaddish like Nusach Sfard. And Nusach Sfard, the person that was Sfard, when they go to Nusach Ashkenaz, they say like Nusach Ashkenaz. Because this is according to Moshe Feinstein. Wherever shul you go to, you have to say Kaddish like that, and you have to answer like Dishach like the people in the place. However, Chacham Ovadia, in his Sefer Yavia Omer, and this is found in the orange box over here, writes that Sfaradim should recite their own Nusach for Kedusha, despite what the Sheikh Tzibur is using a different Nusach. That we should say Nagdisha. Therefore, really, according to Chamavadi, even writes that if you go somewhere, you have to say Kaddish, you're in an Ashkenaz minyan, you should really be saying the Sephardi Kaddish. You should be. You should be saying Sephardi Kaddish. Now, he writes that if there are other people who are saying the Ashkenaz Kaddish, and you're one of the people who are saying Kaddish, then you could say the Nusach Ashkenaz Kaddish also. But you could. If it's going to be problematic, like if you try to say the Sephardic Nusach here in these Young Israel and Nusach Sephardi, they're going to shut you down. They're going to, if you can do it fast, then fine. But they'll I remember when I was davening in Shomer Shabbos in Borough Park, Sephardim always said their own Kaddish. They said it their way, and they would wait for the Sephardim to say Rebach, Vatzalo, and all this. They would answer and they would wait for us. I don't know if you remember. But that's the way they did it. And a lot of other Ashkenaz communities, they don't do that. They want their own style. It's based on Moshe Feinstein. So especially here. So you would have to say the Kaddish the way they did if you had to say Kaddish in their shuls, because that's their decorum. According to Moshe Feinstein, he would have to say what he says here. He's Ashkenaz, so he would have to say what the correct. But according to Chamavadia, we have to keep the Nusach Sfaradim. It's really based. The Nusach Sfaradim that we have is really the Arizal's Nusach, and it's a very special Nusach that the Arizal was half and half. Usually the super ones are half and half. So the Arizal's Nusach is very powerful, and therefore you don't want to switch from it. You always want to stick to it. So for Nagdishach, when no one else is going to hear you saying it, and you're saying it quiet, you say Nagdishach. You don't say Nagdesh Shemach. That's for us Sfaradim. You say the way we have it. Don't say it their way. Okay. They don't say Keser Kete Yitznu Lecha on Musaf on Shabbat. They say different Nusach. Also Nagdesh. Right. They don't say Keter. So we would have to say our Nusach of Kete Yitznu Lecha. Just have to make sure that when it comes to the answering part, you're at the same time to answer. Because the main point is really answering. You really don't have to say the other parts. Kete Yitznu Lecha. You don't have to say any of those parts. Really, all we have to do as a kahal is answer the high parts. Okay, we do it because we want to, and we brought permission that we're allowed to. But really, the main point is to answer. So as long as the answering is the same, that's fine. Yes, Avram, you had something?
Yeah, you're acquainted with the Rabbi Bloom's shul over here in Queens, right?
Rabbi Bloom's shul, yeah.
99% they're all Sephardi minyan over there, except Rabbi Bloom. Many times I approach and other people approach, we said the majority is Sephardi, Boharian. Why can't we change the nusach and the style of reading? So according to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, they should be changing, correct? It should be changed.
I mean, you can't really say that from here. I spoke to Rabbi Bloom about this myself. So I know what he says. He says there's a chazaka. He says there's a chazaka versus minhag hamakam, and that's why he keeps it. You should know that the Beit Yaakov synagogue, Beit Jacob on Boot Street, you should know that they started doing Birkat Kohanim on Musaf on Shabbat. They have a lot of Bukharians that go there, and they wanted to do Birkat Kohanim, and for a long time they were saying no. So Yidi, if you know Yidi from over there, Yidi went to Rabbi Avram Shor, and he told Rabbi Avram Shor, he said the Sfardim, who, Rabbi Avram Shor? I don't know where he is. He's in Flatbush somewhere. So he went to Rabbi Avram Shor, and he went to him, he said, I don't know what to do. All the Sfardim want to do Birkat Kohanim. And Rabbi Avram Shor said to him, that's what they want, that's what they want. He didn't say no. He said, well, that's what they want, that's what they want. And they started doing it during Musaf. Shacharit they didn't do. You'll see a lot of times Ashkenazis, even on Yom Tov, they only do by Musaf. They don't do on.
They do it every morning now.
Every Shabbat Musaf they do, not every morning. Not every morning.
But now they do it mornings also. Every Shacharit they do it.
Where at Beit
I used to
Jacob?
pray there. Yeah, Beit Jacob, 66.
Okay, so they started doing it more. Well, last time I spoke to Yidi, which was a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh wow.
He told me they started doing it on Musaf Shabbat. So you see, it has happened. But Rabbi Bloom Shul, it's a whole different story. Maybe one day when they get a new rabbi, and the Sephardic rabbi, they'll change things over there. Rabbi Bloom, just to say Aga, I don't waste time. Rabbi Bloom told me when I was leaving Regal Park, he's like, you should know, I had you in mind to take over my shul. I said to him, if I would take over, I would change it the first day to Nusach Sephardi. When he wasn't there, we would pray Sephardic Nusach, when he wasn't there. If he missed an Aravit or a Mincha, we would make our own Nusach. We didn't do Ashkenaz Nusach. But when he was there, for his covenant, we left it as is. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Okay, now we're going to deal on page 280. We're going to get into the dinim of Shomea Ka'oineh, right? So what did we say? Hey, we bring Masech to Sukkot. Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis. Ha'omer Baruch Haba v'hein Omer b'Shem Hashem. Mekan l'Shomea Ka'oineh. Okay, the Gemara says, how do you do Hallel? Okay, so in the Talmudical times, the way they did Hallel was the Chazzan would say one part, and they would answer the other part. Similar to the way we say Hodel Hashem Ki Tov, then everyone answers Ki Olam Hasdo. Now, did I have to say? I'm the person answering Ki Olam Hasdo. Do I have to say Hodel Hashem Ki Tov? Do I know they say everything Hodel Hashem Ki Tov 10 times over and over again, but we're not saying that. We're saying the way we always do it. Like it was Shabbat morning, right? You have the boy saying Hodel Adonai Ki Tov, and everyone says Ki Olam Hasdo. Now, did I say the whole pasuk, or I only said half the pasuk? No, we didn't. We said the whole pasuk. Because it's Shomea Ka'oineh. Because when you're hearing it as if you're saying, that's that principle. So I get credit as if I said the whole thing. That's the way they used to do Hallel. They say Baruch Haba, and everyone say B'Shem Amonai. And this way they go back and forth. A lot of times during the Selichot we do that. One answers it back and forth, and that's considered everybody answering it, even though we're not saying the whole thing. We're only saying half. It's Shomea Ka'oineh. That comes from the Gemara Maseches Sukkah. So Rashi explaining the Gemara, he says, we were relying on the person who's saying it. You don't say it. You don't say hallelujah. From here we learn, if someone doesn't know how to read, but he can listen and understand what they're saying, he's Yotzeh Shomea Ka'oineh. V'chein, if someone's davening in a minyan, V'shiach tzibur omer kaddish or Yehei Shmei Rabbo, yishtaku b'tfilatan v'yishma'u b'kavana v'arei hein ki'onin. Therefore, if you're in the Shemonei Esrei and they are up to Nagdishach, what you do is you keep quiet and you listen. V'chiyigmar kedusha yechzar l'tfilatan. And when they finish Nagdishach, you go back to your davening. V'chein yisad Rabbi Yehuda Gaon. This is Rabbi Yehuda Gaon put down as halacha in the Sefer Bal Halachot Gedolot, and this is the way they bring in the Bahag, right? Halachot Gedolot. The Tosafot writes, "Reinu Tam v'Riheim Oimrim, D'Rada Rabba Yishmei Ka'oineh Hevi Hefseka Im Shoytek, K'mokem Noeg Ha'am L'Shtoik L'Shmoy V'Gadol Hamina." The Reinu Tam had an issue with this. He says, if your listening is like you're talking, then you're talking. And if you're talking, you're making a hefsek in the middle of your davening. You're making an interruption in the middle of your tefillah, and you can't do that. Okay? So, but he says, but the minhag is not that way. The minhag is that people do listen. So this goes back to the principle I told you early. Shomea Ke'oneh. Kabuta as if you're saying it. It's like as if you're saying, but it's not actually saying it. Therefore, it's not a hefsek, but it's as if you said it. It's an in-between zone. So it's not completely you said it. Therefore, it's not considered, because if it's like you actually said it, then you're talking in middle Shemoneh Esrei, and you can't do that. But it says if you said it. That's a little different. Tamid Ben Yonah, source 18, they say a davar shetali be'amdei olam ein lanu koyach lachriya b'neihem. We have machlokes Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi. Rabbeinu Tam says you cannot keep quiet because it's as if you talked, right? And Rashi says you could keep quiet. Everyone does according to which opinion they want to do. Rashi is right. Rabbeinu Tam is right. Whichever one you want to do. What does Shulchan Aruch bring down the halakha? And posei lekadosh v'lekedusha. Elo yishtok. He should keep quiet. Rather, he should keep quiet, listen, and that is as if he said it. So the Shulchan Aruch says, like Rashi, that you should keep quiet, listen, and as if you said it, and it's not considered a hefsek. And Kaddish also. Yeah. The Indian Shiatza Bezei, they chiv Kaddish Kedusha. We call Malcolm Lo Chashiv Hefsek. You see, Mishnah Berurah writes of Beferish, it's not considered an interruption, but it is considered as if you said it. So it's something in between. It's not actually saying it, it's as if you said it. Okay? So far, so good. Let's see if we can go one more Indian before we wrap it up for tonight. The conduct of the tzibur, page 282. What you should be doing during the shliach tzibur's repetition. Now, before I start, I just want to make a little introduction. If you saw someone doing something in the quiet Shemoneh Esrei that doesn't go according to halacha, don't follow him. Okay, he might be a big Talmid Chacham, and he's getting the Yitzhar is getting the best of him to learn middle of the repetition. We're going to see that they should not be doing this. And according to Chaim Kanevsky, it's during the Shliach Tzibur's repetition, during the Hazarah. Do any learning or anything in between? According to Chaim Kanevsky, it's a mitzvah above Avera. You're doing a mitzvah through an Avera, and it's not being Yotze. So let's go through it step by step. Shalos Tshuva HaRosh. So the Rosh says, he says over here, the Rosh says everyone has to keep quiet in order to answer Amen. That if the Shliach Tzibur is making the Chazarah and there are not 9 people answering, it's a bracha levatala. 9, by the way, means 6. 6 people at least have to answer. Remember, every time you have it should be 9. And 9 have to answer. Listen what he says over here. Skipping to the second paragraph. Listen what he says. Lekach kol adam yaseh atzmo ki'ilu ein tesha zulato. Everyone should make believe that there's no 9 people except him. That you are number 9. So no one should say the other 9 are answering, so I don't have to answer. That's what the Rosh says. Hey, Rosh knew what you're going to say. He says right away. No, don't say that. You have to be there. Therefore, in the times of the Talmud, they had 10 people in the shul. Batlanin, all day sat there in order to answer Amen. In order they should be a minyan on time. Therefore, they had these Batlanin. Shulchan Aruch says, source 22, 283. Hakal yesh lahem l'shtoik. You have to keep quiet. You have to have kavana. What he's saying. And if they're not 9 who are answering, his brachot are considered a wasted bracha. Therefore, everyone should look at there's no 9 except him. We're going to see that. We're going to see that in a minute. You're going to see that in a minute. You're right. Talmudist. Okay. Listen to what the Mishnah Berurah says. Rabotai. Mishnah Berurah, source 23. Al kain yesh lizar meloimer tachanunim. Therefore, you should not say any tefillot during the Chazarah. You want to talk to Hashem extra during that time? Do not do that. Or to learn. You're not allowed to learn, the Mishnah Berurah says, during the repetition. And even if you're paying attention to the end of the bracha, even paying attention, not the main karai. Listen to say I mean karai right way. Gam kain lo yafa. It's not nice. It's not respectful. Right? Because what's going to happen? The Amei Aretz who are not learning from a book, they're going to see you learning, and they're going to say he's not listening. I don't have to listen either. But they're going to start talking nonsense instead. Therefore, if someone decides that he's going to learn during Shemoneh Esrei and he's still going to answer, he's mehater rabim. He's causing the public to sin. You cannot learn during the Chazara. I know there are people who do it. They know the halacha, and they still do it. What should I tell you? I cannot say this on Shabbat. I cannot say this on Shabbat because it's going to go over not well. You have to know when to say what. You have to know when to say what. That's why you have this shear here, so people know. If you tell people during the speech on Shabbat morning, people are going to take it as if you're hitting them over the head. Here, you're learning. It's different. You have to know when to say what. Okay, now, in the Mishnah Berurah, the Dershu edition, he brings some Reb Chaim Kaneski. Reb Chaim Kaneski says, do not say Shnai Mikra Echad Targum. Do not say Shnai Mikra Echad Targum during the Hazarah. He says the Efshe Shafil B'di Avad Lo Yatzai De Chova. You're not Yotza Shnai Mikra at all if you do it during Hazarah. The Havei Mitzvah Haba Ba'avera. You're doing a mitzvah Haba Ba'avera. You did a mitzvah through an Avera. He writes, Chaim Kaneski writes more. If a person does learn, during the repetition, his limudim will not be successful. It's not going to be successful. His limudim. You don't learn. I'll tell you something in life. The person goes according to the Torah and the Halakha, he's never going to lose out. The Gemara tells us that the Chachamim who spend 3 hours for one tefillah, the Gemara asks, they spend 3 hours for Shacharit, 3 hours for Mincha, 3 hours for Aravit. That's 9 hours a day. How do they succeed in their learning? The Gemara answers, because they daven so well, Hashem made their learning go much better. They're able to cover more ground and understand faster and better than other people the average person takes to learn. You do not lose out by doing the right thing. You think you don't have time, you have to do it during Chazar Shatz, you're not going to gain from that at all. You have to do everything at its appropriate time. The Mishnah Berurah brings down further. He says, now if the Sheikh Tzurba is worried that 9 people are not going to answer, everybody's reading their own book and everyone's talking or on their phone and they're not going to do, what should the Sheikh Tzurba do? He should make a tonight. He should make a condition. He should say, if the people are not going to be answering my tefillah, I should consider this tefillah as a donation and not as a chazarah. Because if it's a chazarah, it's repetition, you need 9 people answering. But if it's a nidavah, then it's my own private tefillah, I don't need 9 people answering. So if you're worried that people will not be answering, the Sheikh Tzurba has to make it tonight to himself to say that my tefillah is actually going to be maybe in a nidavah if they're not answering correctly. Big problems here. I'm going to bring now outside the Tzurba for a minute. I'm going to go to the Yalkut Yosef, Halacha 14 and Siman Kuf Chav Dalid. I wrote down something over here that I wanted to share from here. Let me just get to it. It's a big one. It says over here. I even put some lines over here. A person should not learn Torah during the repetition. If anyone is being lenient in this and learning, they're not doing it with the will of the Chachamim. If you're able to tell them in a nice way that they shouldn't do this, you'll get a bracha there. So he writes the same thing, and he writes the same thing. You should make the Tanai. You should make the Tanai that it should be Nidava if you're worried people are not going to answer. You have to be very careful. Okay. The Piskei Teshuvot says his sin is source 26. His sin is considered too great to bear because not only does he harm himself by causing tefillah not to be accepted, because if you talk during the loud Shemonei Esrei, the tefillah doesn't go up, but he also caused the rest of the tzibur not to be accepted. Therefore, whoever knows that he will not be able to refrain from speaking, the person knows he cannot control himself. He's going to talk during davening. Tov lo shelo yavo lebeit knesset kol ikar. He should not come to shul. If a person knows himself that he's going to talk during davening, don't come to shul. This is what the Piskei Teshuvot says. Don't come to shul. If you know you're going to talk, don't come. You're ruining everything. Ki hu choteh umechati. He sins and he causes the sin. Begarim l'shchina. He causes the shchina shetistalek miYisrael, to leave from the Jewish people. If you're talking in shul, it's like you're serving Avodah Zarah. You're saying, Hashem, you're here. I got something else to do. The sin has no parallel, and it causes that Mashiach shouldn't come. How many Beit Knesses were destroyed because of this sin? People talking in the shul.
So what you should do for this person?
Tell him to stay home. And he says it's even worse. Not only he's talking, but now he's talking Lashon Hara. And he's mocking stuff. And even on Shabbat and Yom Tov, it makes the sin even more and more worse. So the halacha is that if you know you're going to talk in the shul, stay home. Don't go to shul. Maybe that's why certain people I know in the community don't come to shul. Maybe they know if they're going to come to shul, they're going to talk. It's very possible. And he's right. According to halacha, stay home. If you're going to talk in shul, stay home.
How about ladies?
Ladies is another whole topic. Ladies should only really come towards the end of davening, unless they're going to be davening the whole time. Ladies should come for the rabbi's speech, hear what he has to say, stay for musaf, and then they should leave before the husbands even leave. They should not congregate outside. You shouldn't wait for them out there. That's already causing more of the problems of tzniut issues that they're going to be. Everyone's looking at them when they come out. I know this people just. This is also a big problem in Rosh Hashanah.
People talk in the shul, or the guy, but everybody says, "Lady, please don't talk." The lady never talks. Lord Tehillim, men talking. That was message for men.
Right. I've seen this in a lot of shuls. They're talking in the men's section and they scream at the ladies. They say, how do they say in Bukhari and the ladies? They tell them to keep quiet. Meanwhile, the men are talking. I remember at Mordechai once, if they were screaming at the women, Mordechai said, "Don't tell the women anything. You guys keep quiet." Okay. Moving further, Rav Asher Meir writes over here in source 27. Many people who talk during davening are saying things that are forbidden to talk in the Beit Knesset. Some talk things that may not be discussed on Shabbat. They're talking business, and not rich are people saying things that shouldn't be said anywhere. Lashon Hara, whatever. He says even worse. He writes. Rav Asher Meir writes even worse, that these are the same people who, when they go to the theater or they go to the concert halls or they go to things like that, they're extremely quiet to make sure everyone else is quiet. But when it comes to shul, gab, 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 talk. When they go somewhere else, they keep quiet. He says this is even worse. Even worse. Okay. He brings over here from the may one respond during Chazar Shatz to a bracha heard from a nearby minion. So you already finished your Shemonei Esrei, right? They're making Chazara, but next door they're making Chazara also. Can you answer to them also?
Yes, in the Hasidic shul, they have
you have all these different minyanim going on at the same time. Shabbat Shabbos, Tatmer, all Munkach, all of them has like that. Minion factories. So can you answer? Shomer Zaman Aruch points to the Shulchan Aruch. He writes, "Hayu asar b'makom echav v'armin kadosh kedusha. He writes over here.
One minyan, but you hear
Right.
the стенка слышно другого миньяна, когда не может. Я все слышу. Тишина.
So read the orange box. From the Father Shulchan Aruch writes, may answer. Hashem Zaman infers that one who hears Chazar Shatzatz of a different meaning in the middle of his own chazar shatz does not need to answer the other shliach tzibur. So if you're davening here, and right next to you there's another minyan, like at the kotel, you have many minyan going on at the same time. You listen to your shliach tzibur, you answer him. You don't bother answering the other one. You answer only yours. That's what you may answer. You don't have to answer, and you shouldn't answer. You should pay attention to your shliach tzibur because he's doing for you. He's taking the tzibur. He's taking your davening to Hashem. So you want to pay attention to him. Let's finish up on page 286. Page 286, source 29. How should you be during the loud Shemonei Esrei? What's your position? So the Ramah, Rav Moshe Israelish, he says, this is what Ashkenazim do. They should do. Everyone should stand during the Shliach Tzibur. That's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says the decorum, the proper position is to be standing. Here in the note he writes, you're being yotze to the Shliach Tzibur, you should stand like the Shliach Tzibur. That's what he writes in the notes. The Piskei Teshuvot writes, even though all the Grei Achonim cite the Ramah's position that you should stand, many good people are not careful about this, and they have whom to rely on. So if you have to sit, there is permission to sit. This is especially true for someone who determines that in this way he'll have more kavanah, or if he's weak or he's elderly. However, one who can stand should stand. The Yalkut Yosef says it's permissible to sit during Shliach Tzibur's repetition after Kiddusha. So according to the Yalkut Yosef, for the first 3 berachot, you should be standing. And then you sit after Nagdisha. After the Kadosh, El Kadosh, you can sit.
Never sit.
And now he continues, and this is something that they should stand the whole time. Even Kaddish should stand, according to Ashkenazim. We don't have to. It's also good. And if you're davening with them, you should follow what they're doing and stand up at that time also. Now he writes over here, the Yalkut Yosef says that when you get to Modim, if you see some people, they get to Modim, this is what they do. They're sitting and they go like this, Modim. The Yalkut Yosef says that's not Modim. He says that's not Modim. Modim is when you stand up and you bow. If you don't stand up and you bow, you didn't bow for Modim. Okay?
How we should do
For Modim, you stand up and you bow. You don't have to do anything like that.
Traditionally,
Like what? Like this?
the parting way.
I don't know. Bukharians, I see get up. You have to stand up. No such thing. This is not. You're not Yotzei the Rabbanan this way. It's for the bow. In order to bow from Modim to the Banan, you have to stand up and bow. Yalkut Yosef writes that it's not considered bowing in a different sip. He writes
stand up.
you have to stand up and bow. If you don't stand up and bow, you didn't bow. What'd you do? You did this. You did the tilt. You know, the tilt. Like you go outside on Shabbat. Some people instead of saying Shabbat Shalom, they give you the head dip. All right, they give you the head dip this way, that way. Hashem doesn't need your head dip. He doesn't need your tilt. Hashem needs you to stand up and do modim the right way. Just gonna look. Here. I'll read to you the Yalkut Yosef. But Baruch Hu, you don't have to stand up. Avi said very good by Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu, you don't have to stand up. There's no you have to stand up by Baruch Hu. In fact, you don't even have to go like this by Baruch Hu. You can just say Baruch Hu like this. We go like this. Shabbat, Friday night, you have to stand up, not because of Baruch Hu, but because of you're accepting a certain part of the neshama. So you stand up during Kaddish and Baruch Hu. Okay? By Sfaradim.
All in the shul, everybody's eating.
On Shabbat night? Listen what he writes here. He writes over here in the Yalkut Yosef. He writes over here. A person cannot consider to be bowing from sitting. You have to stand. Rather, you should just bow his head. For Modim, you just bow your head. Just do a slight bow. But you have to stand up for this. You cannot do it from the seat. Many people don't know this. You'll see people doing it all the time. They're always sitting and going. You try to tell them, they still do the wrong thing.
You say modim, then anachnu
How do you do it, Rabbi Yosef? Modim anachnu. Okay. So he says until you get to Hashem, you go modim anachnu shatahu. And when you get up, you get up. Okay, now I have two more pieces here that I wanted to review with. and then we'll call it night. We're looking at the Yalkut Yosef, 124.2. 124. Hold on. Something doesn't look right because I'm in 123. Okay. Okay, this is also a very important thing people don't know. People know, some people don't know. By Sfaradim, everything we read during the Shemonei Esrei is read out loud, including in the loud Shemonei Esrei, including Adonai Sivatai Tetach Ufi Agit Hilatecha. It's read out loud, not like the Ashkenazim who read it low. We read it out loud. They don't read it loud. A lot of them read it very low, and you have sometimes boys from the yeshiva come here and they daven and they say Hashem Sivatai Tetach quietly as if no one should hear them. You have to say it. It says over here, Yesh letter pasuk Hashem Sivatai Tiftach loud. That is our minhag. He writes over here. The Ashkenazim, they don't do it so loud. They start from Baruch Atah Hashem. The same applies, by the way, during Modim. There's no reason why Modim the Shel Tzurba goes low. And same thing, but we don't go low by Modim. You read it, continue reading it normally. Okay, so it doesn't mean the Shel Tzurba goes low. The Ashkenazim, they go low. We don't have this low business. You're doing Hazarah, you read the whole thing out loud. Same thing when they end, when you say the Hidatzonim Mefivi also the Shel Tzurba has to say that out loud, not quietly, not mumbo jumbo. Same way as you're reading the whole time, you continue to read it. There's no changes over there. Okay, is the timer ready? Okay, we'll end that over here. Sure, I told you.